At the Ken, very often, the stories that we find ourselves coming back to again and again are the ones where something important is shifting, but the outcome is not clear yet. And they usually begin with something familiar. It could be a company under pressure or a policy decision meant to solve a long standing problem. But once you start reporting, you realize that the effects of those decisions are still playing out and will likely shape what comes next. With the end of the year around the corner, I thought I would tell you about two such stories from our newsroom with perspectives from our reporters who wrote them. The first one is about Flipkart and about Kalyan Krishnamurthy, the company's longtime CEO. Flipkart still plays a central role in Indian e-commerce, and decisions taken under Krishnamurthy's leadership matter well beyond the company. It affects sellers, it affects competitors, and the general direction of the market itself. So, for this story, my colleague Nuha Bubere spent several months reporting on Flipkart, speaking with current and former executives to understand how the company is being run at the moment when its position is under strain. What emerged is not a single turning point, but a picture of sustained pressure both inside the organization and around it. And in the second story, my colleague, the Ken reporter Atul Krishna, looked at what happens when India opens its higher education system to foreign universities and why institutions from abroad are suddenly racing to set up campuses here. This shift in policy to allow foreign institutions to come to India comes at a time when the country's public higher education system has been struggling to keep pace with demand. Of course, the move is going to bring global institutions, capital, and capacity to the country. But it also reflects a choice by the state. And it is very telling. To rely on outside players to fill a gap in education infrastructure while allowing those institutions to take profits back home. Welcome to Daybreak, a business podcast from the Ken. I'm your host Nigdha Sharma, and I don't chase the news cycle. Instead, every day of the week, my colleague Rachel Varghese and I will come to you with one business story that is worth understanding and worth your time. Today is Wednesday, the 24th of December. First, we're going to talk about Nuha's story, where she shone the spotlight on one of the most powerful and most mysterious figures in Indian e-commerce, Kalyan Krishnamurthy, the CEO of Flipkart. Once India's greatest e-commerce hope, Flipkart today feels stuck. Meanwhile, its owner, Walmart, is actually doing pretty well, beating Amazon globally and minting money from ads. Flipkart in India, though, is still chasing profitability, still trying to reorganize, and still putting out fires. And the CEO, once hailed as a wartime general, is now facing a very different kind of a battle. Nuha's reporting shows a company under sustained pressure where decisions travel fast and the margin for error is very, very narrow.
So senior leaders are leaving, the morale is shaken, and few inside the company believe that the end game is anywhere in sight. One executive even told me if imagine Flipkart as a person, so you would just see a confused, a distracted kind of an individual in front of you.
That word that she used, confused, keeps coming up in this story because Flipkart is being squeezed from every side. Meesho owns small town India, Amazon dominates the metros, and the quick commerce race belongs to Zepto, Blinkit, and Instamart. Flipkart somehow missed the moment, and that pressure landed squarely on one man. As Nuha discovered through her reporting, every morning Kalyan Krishnamurthy makes 6 phone calls. No small talk, just numbers.
I found out every morning Kalyan Krishnamurthy wakes up and he makes 6 phone calls. And one by one, this would be key executives inside the company. So he starts off with Hemant Badri in supply chain, then Saket Chaudhary in finance, then we have Kunal Gupta from fashion, Kabir Biswas, who heads the quick commerce vertical from there for Flipkart, which is Flipkart Minutes, then Ajay Yadav in mobiles, and Ravi Krishnan in product, who has now left the company actually. And it's not chit chat or it's not just catching up with them early morning. but it's about numbers, it's about deliverables, it's about what each of these verticals are doing.
This is Krishnamurthy in full wartime mode, obsessive, omnipresent, and deeply skeptical. For example, if bookings on ClearTrip, which was acquired by Flipkart, fall, he does not trust the explanation. He calls competitors himself. But wartime leadership has a cost because wars need more generals, and Flipkart seems to be running out of them.
So earlier in May, Ankit Jain, who used to head grocery and large supply chain for Flipkart, he left to join the rival Instamart or Swiggy. Then we saw like a exodus of people, right, from HR to business operations to people across verticals in Flipkart leaving. And if I have to sum it all up, this would be the third major leadership shakeup for Flipkart in say 6 months. The timing also is very like a very it's an ill timing for the company in a way, because right now they want people to stay, they want their different verticals to become profitable, because the IPO is something which they want to be done with in the next year. And for that they need a stable leadership, they need people who have seen different turns of Flipkart, people who were there with Kalyan, right, when he became the CEO back in 2019, which is not happening now because people themselves don't believe in the company as such, and they are leaving. The lieutenants of Kalyan Krishnamurthy are leaving one by one.
This is why inside Flipkart, expectations remain sky high, even though outside the market has changed. And that gap is exhausting people. Krishnamurthy is not a distant corner of a CEO. He sits on the open floor right across the teams, always within reach. An executive told Nuha that essentially Krishnamurthy is a finance guy. Everything is tracked, metrified, and compared to plan. And if numbers slip, he gets deeply involved. That is when teams feel the pressure. Former executives say that accountability intensified after 2022. Reviews became sharper and targets stayed aggressive even when categories were slowing down. And when growth did not come organically, Flipkart leaned on acquisitions like ClearTrip for travel, Sasta Sundar for pharmacy, and Shopsy for social commerce. None of them really worked. ClearTrip alone has lost over 800 crore rupees last year. And then there's the one bet that Flipkart never fully made: quick commerce. While Zepto and Blinkit doubled orders, Flipkart hesitated. Insiders say that leadership admitted the company was not ready to execute quick commerce at scale. And by the time Flipkart launched Minutes, Walmart had a new message: cut cash burn fast. Expansion paused and growth slowed.
So Kalyan, as a leader, has always been someone who relies on his second in command. And during troubled times, he deploys his trusted lieutenants across these businesses which he sees struggling. One of them is Smriti Ravichandran, who, as one also defined or described her, is a sharpshooter, and she was ping ponged from grocery to mobiles to appliances. Whenever Kalyan feels like, oh, this core business for Flipkart is failing, she has gone around and tried to change that and stabilize the company. But what we're seeing now is a lot of these trusted executors for Kalyan who he could just shift around are also reducing in number. We had Arif Mohammed from fashion who has now left. He's at Angel One. Then among others, the main ones like Amitesh Jha is now at rival Instamart, where he's the CEO there. We have Ayappan who has left ClearTrip and now he's started his own company. So we are seeing even in troubled times when Flipkart needs leadership to step up, the most loyal ones are just leaving or running away from the battlefield.
Basically, anything built outside the company's core business struggled. There was pressure to grow, but there was no clear path. Discounts became the only lever, and even that stopped working. So, where does that leave Kalyan Krishnamurthy? Interestingly, nobody that Noha spoke to said that he should be fired. Most still call him Flipkart's strongest crisis leader. But crises have changed. Back in 2016, Flipkart had one enemy: Amazon. Today, the threats are everywhere. Which is why wartime leadership alone may no longer be enough for Flipkart. There are a lot more interesting details in Nuha's profile of Kalyan Krishnamurthy and her story on Flipkart. Do check out the link in the show notes of this episode. And now, on to the next story from our newsroom. In December 2023, India rewrote one line of policy and changed global higher education in the country forever. Foreign universities were now allowed to open campuses in India, and they could take their profits home. Here's what Atul, who reported on this story, had to say.
It's not all the universities, let's say not the Oxfords or the Cambridges of the world, but the other universities have seen a lot of growth from these international students coming in because they pay a fees that is much higher than what a local student pays. So in a way, the Indian students and the South Asian students, they subsidize one education for their local students and other it funds research in these spaces where funding has been less. So they've grown to be reliant on these students.
Within weeks, these universities from UK, Australia were calling lawyers to hash out the details of setting up in India. States across India began competing, offering land, partnerships, and incentives. Maharashtra announced plans for an Edu city. Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Karnataka, Haryana, all of them wanted in. Because hosting a foreign university is not just about education, it is about status, it is about signaling openness, and most importantly, it is about money. In fact, one British institution decided not to wait. They moved immediately, and what followed was the fastest university built that you've probably never heard of. The approval to set up Southampton University in India came in January 2024. By July 2025, lectures were already underway, 18 months from paperwork to students in classes. You see, nearly 2 million Indian students are studying abroad right now, which is how every year billions of rupees leave the country in tuition fee, in rent, and living costs. But as we know, that route, study abroad, work abroad, has become harder. Post study work visas are shrinking, immigration rules in UK, Canada, and the US have tightened. Canada alone rejected nearly 80% of Indian student visa applications this year. Which is why universities are trying to figure out what's next. They're trying to adapt. And the policy change in India came right in time. If students can't come to you, you go to them.
There was initially a sort of a gold rush of saying this is the first sort of UK university to be set up in India, first international university to be set up in India. So they've really focused on the marketing of that in that sense.
So, creating that narrative has been the most important for these universities coming here. But there is more to it.
Some of the administrators have admitted that they were not prepared to open immediately, but they were forced to because the decision was that you had to get in there first, fix things later.
When the policy was first floated by the government, it spoke about allowing the world's top universities in, the top 100. But by the time the rules finally landed, that bar had slipped to the top 500. Officials explained this to Atul by saying that this is just a stepping stone, that elite institutions will follow. So far, they haven't. And India has been quite generous. Foreign universities do not have to follow many of the rules that Indian institutions do. They can keep their own formats as long as they offer the same degree that they offer back home. For example, on paper, an MBA or analytics degree in Gurgaon looks identical to the one in UK or Australia. But a university is more than just a syllabus, I'm sure you'll agree.
So when you set up a university in India, a university in, let's say, Gift City, which is an industrial area, and it's just a building with no playgrounds or no cultural activities or sports activities, it's just not the same as to what it is there in the UK or Australia. So, and the faculties are different. Most of the faculty are being employed from India. This might be people who have studied abroad and all of that. But a faculty and the academic atmosphere makes the university. And you can't just supplant that easily. And you can't do that in a year. And you can't do that in a rush.
And that exposes the uncomfortable truth at the heart of this experiment. For many students, studying abroad was never just about education, it was about aspiration. A foreign campus in India can offer a British curriculum, but it will not give students a British work permit. And that is the trade off that India may succeed in keeping more money at home, and states may gain prestige and investment, and universities may find new markets. But for students, the promise feels altered. Something gained, but also a lot lost. So, in this race to import global education, are we really building knowledge, or is it just a new kind of a business? So, dear listeners, as this year comes to a close, these were the kind of stories that we kept returning to. Not because they offer easy conclusions, but because they capture moments where decisions were still unfolding and the consequences were fully not visible yet. The Flipkart story and the one on foreign universities are just two examples of the reporting that we spent the most time on this year. You can find more of our best work from 2025 on the Ken's website, stories that dig into companies, policy, and power and try to make sense of what is changing. Thank you for tuning in and catch you in the next episode.
Daybreak is produced from the newsroom of the Ken, India's first subscriber-focused business news platform. What you're listening to is just a small sample of our subscriber-only offerings, and a full subscription offers daily, long-form feature stories, newsletters, and a whole bunch of premium podcasts. To subscribe, head to theken.com and click on the red subscribe button on the top of the website. Today's episode was hosted and produced by my colleague Snigdha Sharma and edited by Rajiv CN.